Welcome. My name is Penelope Chatterton. Welcome to Awaken the Dream. My friends, Ingrid Peschke is back to talk with me this week about Christian Science today. If you didn't catch last week, we talked about Mary Baker Eddy, and I'd highly recommend that. So we can segue right into the real meaning of Christian Science, and we'll start with, again, how did we get into it, or you were raised in it, and it just felt good.
It did.
It's made your life work.
It did. It's practical. It's been a wonderful practice and study for my whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have, other than your reading in church and the meeting Wednesday night, are there other things that a Christian Scientist might do, like the monitor or go to the reading room, or do you have other little habits maybe that go in with what you do?
Yeah, there is. I think one of the biggest ones is studying our weekly Bible lesson, which is what you hear on Sunday in church, but it's also what students of Christian Science will study and read throughout the week. We get it in many forms. You can get it online now, printed, and all different ways.
Do you get it before the service?
Yes.
So you come in.
There are 26 lessons for the whole year, and there are 13 subjects that actually Mary Baker Eddy came up with.
Okay.
And usually about 6 sections, and they're made up of Bible citations and science and health citations that are from her book.
Yeah.
That help to sort of elucidate what's been read in the Bible. Some of the subjects are like love, which is a synonym for God.
Yeah.
And Christian Science is one of the subjects. We just recently had it. This next Sunday is Sacrament.
Really?
Yeah.
So you come more prepared. I mean, each week, and that calendar is the same for everybody, everywhere.
It is. So whether you're sitting in Germany, where my husband is from, and listening to a service in German, or whether you're sitting in Boston at the headquarters for the church, you will hear the same lesson.
Yeah.
What is different is perhaps what the readers choose for the hymns and the music.
So they're the pastors, really. There are none. There's only a reader, and there's a Bible and the key.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Bible and the Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, the founder of the religion, Mary Baker Eddy, wrote. Yeah. Those books together form the pastor for the church.
I like
the readers, so that it's really an impersonal pastor.
Yeah.
So the readers aren't putting their own sort of personal spin on it, or giving a lecture, or giving their opinion. Really just letting the books speak for themselves, and letting the listener, the person in the audience, really have their own communion with God in that service.
Now, what is the reading room all about? You have a reading room.
Yeah, some people have heard of the Christian Science reading room. Reading rooms were, I think, popular in Mary Baker Eddy's day. I think even Oprah has something called a reading room. With her books that she recommends. But now, so there are reading rooms that are associated with branch churches. They usually have a place set aside where they sell the writings of Mary Baker Eddy. They sell Bibles. They sell other music. They have a quiet place for study.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's an oasis in the community. I know people who go there just to read maybe the Christian Science Monitor, or find a little peace in their day.
Yeah.
But like a lot of things, they've also gotten so they're more online, and we have places to find all those resources.
You're going to lose me one of these years.
You can find those resources more online today than you could before, of course. So they're not just rooms now, they're also spaces within the worldwide network.
Well, if there's someone sort of manning the store, are they on call if someone has questions or needs to talk or wants advice?
Yes.
So you have someone there that you can work with.
Yes.
And then there's always the Wednesday night meeting at 7:30.
And it's different in different parts of the country. Typically, it's like our church, it's at 7. So I think, I'm sorry, it is at 7:30 at our church. But there are different churches that might start at 7, might a little earlier or later in the summer. It just sort of depends on the branch church.
And that's for testimony. Now, is there anyone up at the front of who's manning the? So
the first reader, who I read with on Sunday, I'm the second reader in my branch church, and I read from the Bible. But my partner in reading reads from the Science and Health, and he prepares the Wednesday evening testimony service. So he would prepare about 20 minutes of reading that is also from the Bible and Science and Health on a topic that he has chosen. It might be specific to he or she, for that matter, depending on where you are. It might be something that's in the news. It might be, you know, say on earthquakes, or it might be on, you know, peace in the world. It might be on relationships. It really just depends on what's come to that individual's thought and prayers for the week of what's needed in the community. Those services are meant for the community, not just for members of the church, but anyone can come. Find inspiration. And then the last half of the service is for, as you said, testimonies of healing. For those who are practicing Christian Science and finding it very applicable and practical in their life.
Does anyone ever look for support or advice, or do they just come with a testimony, or do they ever look for feedback, or is it they just stand up and...
So it's not like a therapy session.
That's what I thought.
It's not a session of question and answers. It's not a session of back and forth. It really is, that second half is, if you've never been to one, it can be very quiet, full of prayer, and then spontaneous people will stand up and share. And I think, boy, I've been one of those people who've come and just wanted inspiration and healing and thoughts, not necessarily wanting to share, but really listening for what other people share in that service.
Of course.
So I think, you know, there's a varying degree of people who come prepared, and others who just are there to benefit from the atmosphere.
Well, the church is what, centuries old, and it's the same as at the beginning. And as you said in the last program, your individual practice is really what's important. There's no rule about how you operate as a Christian Scientist. There are certain tenets, there are certain ideas about how you function and your health and your no addictions. I mean, there are certain things that might be frowned on, which people wouldn't want to join anyway.
And you know, the interesting thing is that to me, it's really a student's religion. It is about wanting to study and practice individually, but then there's this wonderful network of support, whether it's through the periodicals that the church publishes. The Christian Science Sentinel is a weekly periodical, and then they have a monthly called the Christian Science Journal. Those are full of, you know, articles and healing accounts from people all over the world who have shared their experience of how they're practicing Christian Science in their daily life. It's totally inspiring.
So it's like being in school.
A little bit. I mean, you know, you've got your books, you've got the magazines, you've got online content.
And that's your support.
There's a website called jsh-online.com. I use it all the time. I love it. There are, you know, weekly chats with Christian Science practitioners on wonderful subjects that are very helpful, and people can write in their questions and find answers. So it's a student's religion, and it's definitely a religion that I think is about the practical application of the laws, the spiritual laws that Mary Baker Eddy really established Christian Science on. These laws are based on Christ Jesus' healings. The idea that they're not, you know, kind of specific to a person, but that they're sort of similar to what we consider the laws that hold up our universe. You know, we trust that gravity keeps us on the ground, the sun rises and sets. We may not understand it, but it happens every day.
So there has to be a trust about who we are.
And then what about the spiritual laws of the universe? We may not see them. We may not even fully understand them, but they're holding us up. And they're the basis of, I would say, this religion.
So the Jesus healing, how he did it and what he thought and how he surrendered to his guidance, and how loved he was, and the love within him that he shared. You've got these basic healing principles to live by.
You know, and I think that's why Mary Baker Eddy called herself not just the founder of a religion, but the discoverer. So instead of seeing herself as a creator, she saw herself as a discoverer. Really just discovering these underlying laws. And that's the beauty of it, because they're there for us to discover as well. She's certainly spent many years writing them down and helping people to understand them in her book, Science and Health. But it all goes right back to the scriptures.
The scriptures are interesting because, you know, men put the scriptures together and they had divine inspiration, but you know, sometimes they get a little bit corporate and they need a little kick to be really understood what the real meaning was, which very few understood at that time. So that's where I could see she had a rather large job on her hand, which must have been more than rewarding.
Oh, I think it really...
to really discover the essence of healing.
Yeah, and I think too, it's easy to read the Bible and kind of say, well, those were miracles.
Yeah, aren't they nice?
Isn't that nice that those people got to get up and walk and see when they were blind? But boy, oh boy, that would
sounds good.
Forget it.
Yeah.
And I think the thing to me about the Bible is I think it's sort of a living guidebook for our lives today. These prophets and apostles, I mean, there were people predating Jesus's time, of course, that also healed. Elijah, Elisha, Moses.
Yeah.
They also glimpsed.
Yeah.
So to me, it's, what Mary Baker Eddy says is it's the Christ healing was present also before Jesus walked the earth. These were true. Principles.
Yeah.
If they truly are spiritual principles, laws, then they don't just start with a person. They're,
I think
present all the time.
The church organizations before the metaphysical aspect can get a little mired in do's and don'ts and rules and get away from the essence of the Spirit and what really is required, which is exciting when you really want to think about, gee, if Jesus did it and he's saying we can do this, then it's going to have to mean more than going and repeating this and saying that and putting my money in the whatever and be done with it. I mean, she really dug deep, but her healing was what woke her up.
It was her pivotal healing that she experienced herself, and then really kind of saying, well, can this be repeated?
Yeah.
And I think what she found was, her science, the Christian Science, which she called her religion, was reinstating practical Christianity, demonstrable
Did she see Christ as a man, Jesus as a person, like we are all people, that what he did was for all of us? Because, again, we have him on a pedestal, we have various interpretations of his role.
Yes.
But she seems to have brought him down to looking him right in the face.
Well, I think she saw Jesus as a man who had a short, albeit amazing career on earth, and
3
did
years.
things that really the rest of us can hardly hold a candle to. Pretty amazing, man. But on the other hand, what she calls the Christ spirit, which he embodied, his divine title, the Christ, was something that truly can be experienced today.
Yes.
That it's an undying concept. And so really getting in touch with what the Christ is, this immortal idea, this light that we all have within us. I think that was what gave her the courage to say that this wasn't limited to this amazing man's brief, albeit amazing history on earth.
This mortal concept or material concept that many folks embrace, she just moved it into the real depth of spirit. Spiritual healing really requires that depth of inner work, the Christ within all of us, the consciousness that we all share.
You got it.
Very few got it in Jesus's day, and that is for sure. And so for her to uncover and have her healing, nothing could stop her. I could see that.
Well, and it sure tried, I'll tell you.
I bet.
Because, I mean,
a woman?
Right there, that was one of the #1 things to kind of overcome. But yet she did, and I think, through prayer, through her great conviction in her, I think, role in bringing this to humanity, and also just her love for mankind.
I think, do you mean by her prayer her acceptance of her inner grace and the guidance that she received and how she changed from embracing that consciousness, from going from the mortal material into something of the spirit?
Yeah, I mean, I think that her daily prayer, her habit of turning to God for whatever came across her path was so deeply entrenched in her. That was what she did to find answers, and I think that was the most important thing in her life. And I think she knew that if you don't spend time cultivating that understanding, that relationship, you can't possibly help others. So I think, you know, that was
discipline of soul.
Discipline that she developed from an early age, really.
Yeah.
And then I think finding how practical it was. Really, as you say, you know, it's not just rejecting the material and adopting the spiritual. It's seeing how one can influence and, in fact, relate to the other, so that we then have, you know, joy and health and goodness in our lives.
I love the fact that we talked today about having religions and then having spiritual practices. And now religion, with Mary Baker Eddy, brought that spiritual practice into what looked like the form of a religion and just moved it into the depth of what Jesus was talking about. Because Jesus was for everybody.
Yeah, he sure was.
And that's where I think she had work to do, is to help others believe that we've got what he's got. But you've got to do the work. You've got to
you've got to work at it a little bit.
Step up to the plate and do the job.
Exactly.
Yeah. But once I bet she got hooked on it, she couldn't be stopped. Once she had her healing and saw what Spirit did for her, that just keeps drawing you back and back and back.
You know, the interesting thing about it too is that I think there's just a great, there's kind of a partnership with realizing the potential and the power of that, but also on the other hand, being very humble about it. Very much a selfless endeavor, not ever thinking that it's coming from you personally.
Oh, I know.
I think she had many instances where she just had to claim that. It's not her person, her understanding that was doing the healing. It was what she referred to as God, as divine mind, this one intelligence that governed, you know, her universe in a perfect way. And understanding that is what brought about healing. But it wasn't the person. Otherwise, you begin to rely very much.
It was the love within her Christ mind, like that was within Jesus's mind, that took over and led her and led him and leads people to a life of peace and security and comfort and expectation. Actually, just the Red Sea can open and the crooked ways can be made straight, and
all the things that you think are impossible.
Yeah, but you don't go for those things. You don't look at those gods to say, oh, I want these things. You just go for resting in Spirit.
And you know, there's something really powerful about seeing healing in your life. Even for those who may be agnostic or atheists.
That's true.
To me, it's about seeing proof. And so, you know, for Christian Science today, I think to be relevant, it's about those who practice it or those who are in the full-time practice of being practitioners of Christian Science, helping others find healing, to really see the proof of that today. It's not just talking, it's doing.
It's the proof.
It's the proof. That's,
to
me, is what
that.
You know, you can talk about math all day, but if you don't go and do the problems, you know, it's not worth it.
And what could be more exciting than the proof of spiritual healing? What could be more exciting than that? Being here.
Exactly. You know, it is, and that's what it's all about.
Do you see yourself moving from practitioner to anything else? Are you a writer? Are you doing stuff?
I am a writer, and I do them tandem, actually. I do work for the headquarters of the church. And I was an editor for a long time for the publishing activities, which I really enjoyed tremendously.
Did you?
So I helped edit the articles and testimonies that came in for first the Christian Science Journal and then the Christian Science Sentinel, the weekly publication. And then for the last few years, I've been the media and legislative rep for Christian Science in the state of Massachusetts.
What does that mean?
I know, it's kind of like, what is that?
Wow, what a great title.
It's really fun. It means I get to write. I actually blog for Huffington Post.
What fun.
On health and the spiritual nature of health. And you know, how does Christian Science intersect with that? I get to meet with people who are healers themselves, doctors, medical practitioners, as well as holistic healers.
Doctors, that's wonderful.
You know, and especially here, right in the Boston area, you know, there are so many who are considering
one big hospital.
But also who are beginning to see on a deeper level that there are answers that are not just physical in nature. They're recognizing the role of a patient's thought and how that plays into healing. And I think Christian Science has a big place at the table on that conversation.
Lifestyle, being willing to change, being willing to give up crutches, being able to think outside of that box. You know, we live in a world of Western medicine where there's certain, you know, things that are just automatic.
Yeah.
And I see that through the major hospitals, there's that wonderful opening up.
And I think that, you know, in some ways, health practitioners are catching up with the public who've kind of been there for a long time.
Yeah.
What is it? 75 to, there's different figures, but I think between 70 and 90% of Americans spend out of pocket for alternative health care.
That's amazing.
And considering how much they already are spending on medical insurance, you know, to be willing to then, you know, shell out their own dollars for extra care.
I didn't know it was that great.
It's pretty high.
That's wonderful.
It's a pretty high figure. And, you know, I think the numbers change, but it's higher than 50% for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty amazing when you think about it.
Yeah, it's nice that human beings go ahead and march on, and and reach out and try.
And try, you know. But I think it also suggests that maybe there's a yearning for something beyond what may be considered a traditional, conventional approach to managing one's health.
Yeah.
You know, and a huge segment of the population also prays daily.
Yes.
And sees the power of prayer. Whether they see it in relation to their health is maybe a question mark, but I think many do.
Yeah. Now, explain the idea of prayer. Is it spoken? Is it a state of being? Is it a state of resting in the presence? I mean, it can take various forms. I mean...
Yeah, you know who explains it best?
Who?
Mary Baker Eddy.
Oh, yes.
At least for me.
Okay.
The first chapter in her book is called Prayer.
Okay.
And I've learned so much from that chapter. But one of the things she says in that chapter is desire is prayer.
I love that.
And no loss can occur from trusting God with our desires, that they may be molded,
the prayers of the heart,
and exalted before they take form in words and deeds.
I love. That's what
desire
I was
looking
for that. The prayers of the heart.
It's prayers of the heart, and she also talks about having audience with Spirit. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, and it's as much about listening, as it is about going with a laundry list of concerns. I have to sort of discipline myself to throw those things out.
Right.
How easy it is to go and say, I've got this and that, God, come on, where's the answer today?
Love has a vibration that takes us out of this world, and that's that desire that comes from here.
Yeah.
That when we go there, this is no longer here, and we're in the
moment.
We're in the moment.
I think, you know, it's probably very unique for everyone. I know some people say, you know, they hear God's voice. Others say it differently. For me, it's a deep-seated peace.
Yeah.
And I pray to find peace.
Yeah.
So instead of, you know, and also to address fear or concern. And so it's a practical approach for some of the things that ail us today.
Yeah.
One of the #1 complaints people see doctors about is stress.
I know.
And they attribute that to most diseases.
Yeah, they do. And this world is so much more fear-based because we are so privy to so much more stuff that we really need to, you know, I think that's been a blessing in a sense. It's just the stretching of the worst is allowing us to think about how can we go for the best.
I think so too. You know, there's been a big push towards meditation, Eastern philosophy, and yoga and this type of thing. And I think there can be so many benefits from that. I would make a distinction with prayer in that rather than emptying one's thought, we're really filling it.
Yeah.
Maybe emptying it of the fear.
Yeah.
But filling it.
Yeah.
With what we're hearing.
Yeah.
In our prayer closet.
It helps us quiet all that down so that we can be receivers.
That's it.
And you know, yoga's on every block.
It is, isn't it?
I mean,
and I'm certainly not. I don't do yoga. I've done it once, just because I thought I better find out what this is all about.
Sure.
It was fun. But I would say that how important it is to take some of those elements I think that people are looking for.
Yeah.
They want peace. They want quiet. We're such a technologically centered universe right now. And no one can get detached from their devices. And you know, Ariana Huffington is a big proponent of taking those vacations from the device.
Yeah.
Really finding time for sleep and quiet contemplation, those things. I think there's some leading kind of figures today who are helping us to see that that's not exactly the best way to go about things. I think prayer, you can't be checking your messages and texting or whatever while you're trying to find peace.
Well, all those meditation practices that have surged are just such a cry for help, like, to get away from all of that. Where can I go to help?
Feed your inner spirit.
Yeah.
So it's not just feeding the battery on your phone.
Yeah.
You got to make sure you're recharged too.
Yeah. Breathing is great stuff. Great breathing.
Yeah, just stop and take some time to.
Yeah, because when we're rattled and stressed, everything's just like in high gear, and we're all doing our Type A thing, and so to really let that go really helps us to go into a prayer mode.
Can you imagine Jesus with an iPhone?
No.
He would probably, if he had the multitudes thronging him, you can imagine.
Excuse me.
How full would that, But I have to say, I love these modern technologies have helped me be more efficient in my work, a better mom, better everything. But, you have to discipline yourself to also put it aside.
You're young yet.
So, there's benefits to it, but we also have to learn how to.
Yeah. So in our last couple of minutes, Christian
already
Science Church, we're down to that.
That might happen.
I know.
Okay.
I told you. It's all over the world. It was a remarkable woman who definitely was given a mission.
Yes.
No question. She was, and how beautiful that her life of stress and duress and loss opened her up, and she had the drive.
Yes.
And we all have that drive if we want to use it. And
we do.
We do. We can all get help on on our potential.
I may have mentioned this, but in the last show, but I think one of her comments in a very late interview before her final years was just that all my tears, all my efforts have been for humanity, not just my own devoted followers. Certainly not just for herself. That would have been not a great purpose.
Well, that's a beautiful sentence to end on, and thank you, Ingrid Peschke, for joining me today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, my friends, for joining us on Awaken the Dream. I will talk to you again soon.